who starts, who sits, and how to become the greatest of all time. This is the Fantasy G.O.A.T.
Hello and welcome to the Fantasy G.O.A.T. Kids at home. Happy to have you with us. I'm Mike Davis. That's Jason Feinberg. Jason, let's do a quick check-in just to see how you're doing fantasy football-wise so far. How's everything going? How's your mood?
Well, listen, I've decided to not even bother with the whole games anymore. I have a game within the game. I like to see if my players can make it past the first quarter, and so far I'm losing. Because of it, I'm definitely not winning. I'm losing more games than I'm winning because my players can't seem to stay on the field.
It's been a rough go-around this year with all the injuries. But guess what? Coming up on this week's show, we're going to be breaking down those injuries. We got a little bit of this or that we're going to be playing with Davante Adams or Amari Cooper. As I was alluding to, we're going to be talking to our favorite doctor, Dr. Nithin Nawal. He's going to be breaking down some of those key impactful injuries, especially when it comes to Cooper, Kupp, Nick Chubb, and Jonathan Brooks, all edging to return. Plus, fantasy expert Ian Ritchie is going to join us and tell us who he's targeting on the waiver wire this week and who we really got to make sure we get into our lineup. Plus, we're going to be checking in with the great Sam Argier with GOATcast. But first, let's start with this or that. So, Jason, let's start with these two newest wide receivers that were traded. We got, Davante Adams now in New York, and we got Amari Cooper now in Buffalo. Two big news trades this week. Who would you rather have for the rest of the fantasy football season?
Well, no doubt, since they both played for either Vegas or Oakland and they move on, they're both going to do exceptionally well. Once they leave,
They both have that in their past.
Right, exactly. So now it's time to do really well. All right, so I actually was thinking about this. You basically have Davante Adams versus Stephon Diggs, if you think about it, because now Amari Cooper instantly becomes the number one. That said, because of maybe a little bit of age and wear and tear, I'm going to go with Amari Cooper on this one for the long haul. It's a tough call, though, because you do have the relationship with Rodgers and
I am
Adams.
shocked. I completely disagree. I think, Amari Cooper, he hasn't looked great this season. He looked better with Joe Flacco last year with Cleveland, but I don't know. I mean, I feel like Davante is still elite. I think there's a clear difference there, and he's getting back with, Rodgers looks good. Maybe he's not as mobile, but he still has that beautiful arm. I'm really thinking he's going to have a similar impact. You remember when Philadelphia got Terrell Owens and what that did for the team when they ultimately went on to the Super Bowl? I think it's going to be something, maybe not Super Bowl, but it's going to be something similar.
By the way, speaking of third-round picks, Terrell Owens was a third-round pick. That's what Las Vegas got by shipping Davante out. So we'll see if they get a TO in the future.
Okay, the pride of Fresno State. All right, so now let's talk about the two wide receivers that are left to pick up all the work, Jason. Jerry Jeudy or Jacoby Myers. Who do you want on your squad?
Honestly, I think that Jerry Jeudy is more talented, but he just can't catch the ball. And we have seen Jacoby Myers have success with Aiden O'Connell. Yeah. So I'm going to go with the hometown guy, Jacoby Myers.
I agree with you. Jacoby Myers, he's a sneaky pick, talented guy. He never really had the opportunity in his career to be the number one guy. So I'm excited to see what he does for the rest of the season, being number one in that offense. And lastly, Jason, very quickly, our producer James made sure he really fit this one in for us because it's all about his beloved Pittsburgh squad. Would you rather roll with Justin Fields or Russell Wilson for the rest of the season? And this, remember, it's all fantasy football related.
Okay, fantasy football related, 100% Justin Fields, because he's got the running ability. And I don't remember the last time Russell Wilson impressed me. I mean, you have to go all the way back to Seattle.
Yeah, I think Fields is clearly the answer just because of the dual threat and the running ability. The thing is, though, there is a lot left to be desired with Fields currently with the way he's throwing the ball. So if Russell Wilson can get that deep threat going, especially, Pickens. There's a lot of guys there that aren't getting the production we'd like to see. So I don't know. I think Fields still has to be the guy, but Wilson has an opportunity now.
Yeah, well, let me tell you one thing. James and the rest of the Yinzers, I'm not investing any time in the Pittsburgh team anymore. I'm not having a good feeling about them.
Okay, don't talk about my boy Mike Tomlin like that.
Yeah, all right. All right, time for the 2-minute drill now.
Yes, Mariah Janos from Beat the Odds is here to share the results from last week's GOAT lineup. Take it away, Mariah, and please
This was close.
Rip us to shreds.
Yes, Kimmy Gibbler is here to annoy you. And for those of you who don't know, that's a Full House reference. Jason brought it up a few weeks ago. I'm bringing it back because I loved it just so much. And to stick with the theme of throwbacks, we are turning back the clock to look at Week 5 results since we were all on a bye last week. And this was quite the battle between you two. So, Jason, we're looking at your lineup. Quarterback Caleb Williams for 26.4 points. Running back Chase Brown, 16.4. Wide receiver Christian Kirk, 12.8. Tight end Hunter Henry, 5.2 for a total of 60.8. And as for Mike, quarterback Geno Smith with 22.2. Running back Jordan Mason with 9.8. Wide receiver Brian Thomas, 26.2. And tight end Zach Ertz for 3 points. With a total of 61.2, Mike just edged out Jason to get back in the win column. And it was totally that Jewish New Year reset that really helped solidify the win here for you, Mike. I feel it in my bones. So right now, looking at the big picture, Jason is 3-2, while Mike is 2-3 this season. But it continues to be a whirlwind for fantasy managers. The biggest struggle each week seems to be, in addition to injury, the tight end position. Jason, you selected Hunter Henry. I understand why. When your quarterback play isn't great, which is an understatement for New England, tight ends can be a good safety net with their size, the shorter route options, and especially going up against Miami. What could possibly go wrong? It was a toilet bowl game, and Hunter Henry produced plunger numbers with 2 receptions on 4 targets for 32 yards. Woof. Now, if Hunter Henry is the plunger, Zach Ertz is the toilet paper that's stuck to the bottom of your shoe, Mike. He doesn't even make it to the toilet. He's just being dragged around, taking the L with his 2 receptions on 8 targets for 10 yards. And against Cleveland, of all teams. And again, tight ends are hit or miss, but maybe for the future, look to teams that use tight ends as more of a wide receiver one, like a Brock Bowers here in Vegas. But that's just my 2 cents in 2 minutes, you guys.
I mean, let's just remind everybody at home, because listen, that was a brutal takedown, and we appreciate that, Mariah. But let's just remember, we can only use a player one time. So if you use Brock Bowers that once, that's it. That's the rest of the season. So you're
but
gonna
when do you pull the trigger?
That's the key, and that's the key, Jason.
So let me ask you, Mariah, if you're going to say that he had a revival because of the Jewish New Year, does that make me Rabbi Noah's brother in Nobody Wants This?
Yes, the loser sibling?
Yes.
Probably.
All right, well, I have work to do then.
Tremendous show, and now I'm thinking about charcuterie. But that's a reference.
Oh, gosh.
Great
And that your biggest fear are facelifts.
Of course. All right, Mariah, thank you so much. As always, I feel wonderful after that segment. All right, guys, coming up, we're checking in with Dr. Nithin Natwa. He's giving us the latest on the injury reports for Cooper Kupp, Nick Chubb, and Jonathan Brooks, the guys that have been at the bottom of your bench. They're finally going to get to play.
Hallelujah.
Stick around. All right, welcome back to the Fantasy GOAT. Joining us now is the GOAT himself, Dr. Nithin Natwa. Doc, lots of big impact players returning to lineups. Finally, a lot of these guys have been on my bench for a while, Jason. But let's start off with this. Cooper Kupp. Doc, would you play him in your own league this week?
Actually do have Cooper Kupp, and I am definitely going to play him this week. I'm happy that we're starting off with a player with good news because I rarely have good news on players. But he's got a high ankle sprain. He's had more than enough time to recover from it. And from my impression, the Rams don't typically return players back sooner than they're able to. They usually take a little bit more time on average. So I would say that Cooper Kupp has had enough rest. We know that the high ankle cannot really be played through, so it's good that they're not rushing him through it. We've seen other players rush through it and re-aggravate it. But the re-aggravation risk for me is not high enough that I'm looking to trade him away, and I am confident starting him because you should start your studs.
So, Doc, I have Cooper Kupp in a league along with Nick Chubb. They're both on my IR. I'm going to bring them both up. I am, like you, going to play Cooper Kupp. I am a little worried about Chubb if he plays. What do you think?
Did you guys read that letter to Cleveland that he put in the Tribune, the Players Tribune?
No.
It was tear-rending. Like, it is a great article. I think everyone should read it. And I'm going to look like a villain for saying that I don't think that you should start him when he comes back because honestly, I'm rooting for him to prove me wrong, and I want him to come back stronger than he was before. Everyone says Nick Chubb is built different, but this is the second major knee surgery he's had, and he is at the upper end of age-wise for running backs. And he's only about a year out from the surgery. And typically, we never really target running backs that have had major knee surgery the season afterwards. And with this being his second one, I mean, I think he's going to be a serviceable back end RB2. So if those are the numbers you're looking for, then yeah, start him. But if people are looking for that Nick Chubb of old,
Right.
I don't think that's going to be him this season.
Okay, interesting stuff. Lastly, Doc, Jonathan Brooks, the rookie running back for Carolina. We will finally see him in action, hopefully. I'm crossing my fingers this week. And if so, if he does play, what will his impact look like?
Once again, this is another player that I'm actually high on, but not for these first couple weeks, especially with Chuba doing as well as he's doing. I don't see any reason why they immediately load up their rookie running back, regardless of how high he was drafted. Another person about a year out from surgery. Luckily, his knee injury was a clean ACL tear. They can reconstruct that pretty straightforward, and he is also very young as well too, so he should recover well. Especially in Dynasty, I'm really high on him, and I'm also high on him this season around the fantasy playoffs time, maybe a little bit before that. So around week 11, 12, I would expect him to really ramp up.
Yeah, I hope San Francisco has the same theory as what you just mentioned with Carolina. What they do the same thing with Christian McCaffrey, because I have no shares of him,
Right.
but I have Jordan Mason and Isaac Guerrero. So, but I see what a lot of these teams might be doing that, where they rest these studs for more towards playoff time, because the guys that are in right now are doing pretty well.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right,
you
guess we
gotta
lost
love
him.
it. All right, Doc. Well, thank you so much for up-to-the-minute fantasy injury news and advice. Go follow at Fantasy Docs on social media. Good luck this week, Doc. We're going to need it with Cooper, Kupp. Thanks so
Yes.
much.
Thanks.
After the break, we're talking waiver wire. Ian Ritchie from Fantasy, Full-Time Fantasy. He's going to join us to break everything down and all the players you need to add to your team. Stick around. All right, hey kids, it's waiver wire time here on the GOAT. So here to join us now is fantasy expert with Full-Time Fantasy, Ian Ritchie.
All right, what's going on, Ian? I know the first guy you have for us, a lot of people didn't even know his name before a breakout game with Tampa Bay. It's Sean Tucker. He went off.
Yeah, he sure did, and nobody expected it. You know, Sean Tucker's in his second year out of Syracuse, and he came for Tampa, and he played because Rachaad White's got a hurt foot, and we're not sure how long he's going to be out. On the entire season, White has about 187 yards rushing, and in one game, Sean Tucker came out at 136 yards, ran north-south really well, and did a great job. It's going to be hard to keep him on the bench when White comes back because of how hard he runs, but I would expect to keep him in the lineup for a little while and take a chance with bye weeks and injuries you have coming up. You could do a lot worse than having Sean Tucker in there. I think that he's really carved himself out a role.
Yeah, and Jason, you picked him up, I saw in
Yeah.
our league, so that's a good pickup there. Ian, who do you have next for us?
You know, I have Cole Kmet. And Cole Kmet's one of those guys that's always overlooked. He plays for Chicago. He's out of Notre Dame. And this is his fifth year. And, you know, his problem has always been lack of targets. But this guy is such an unbelievable athlete. And, you know, just watching last week's game, he collected all 5 targets, had 70 yards and 2 touchdowns. What was really impressive also, and shows you athletic ability from him, is, you know, he had to step in as the emergency long snapper. Their long snapper got hurt. This guy stepped in as a 6'6" guy, takes over the long snapping duties 6 times, and wins NFC Special Teams Player of the Week. So on top of his 5 catches for 70 yards and 2 TDs, he's Special Teams Player of the Week, and tells you how special of an athlete he is at that size. They're in chase mode a lot there, and Caleb Williams is not afraid to throw the football. Earlier in the season, a lot of guys were really nervous about him. They had a lot of mouths to feed. You know, they have a lot of good receivers there with Adunze and Moore and Allen. But Kmet has really got a nice role for himself. His target share is low, but his efficiency is really high. And tight ends are hard to come by right now. And you have a top 5 tight end who's on a lot of waiver wires. So I would go out and grab him.
Yeah, it was an impressive game, but it was on the West Coast. Our people on the West Coast didn't see it too bad. Anyway, Ian, you got a guy starting to emerge in Green Bay.
Yeah, we like Romeo Doubs a lot. Last year, Romeo Doubs in this offense had 8 touchdowns. He had extremely high expectations for himself this year. Some of you probably remember Romeo Doubs out of college. He went to Nevada and was drafted in 2022 and was a great player there. He came in, he had 8 touchdowns last year with Love, and he really thought this was going to be a breakout year for him. You know, he's had a few issues. He got suspended for a little selfish attitude he had. He came back. He's taken full responsibility for it. He's shown maturity in that. And they gave him some trust this week, throwing the ball down the red zone. He had a couple touchdowns. And with Wicks out for a little while, that creates an enormous opportunity for Romeo Doubs to step back in and be a really big contributor. We have him for 10-plus touchdowns on the season. So he's a great guy on a lot of waiver wires that you can count on week in, week out.
All right, great stuff. As always, Ian, go check him out at Full Time Fantasy. Next, we're hearing from our guy, Sam Argier.
Mike Jason, 3rd week in a row with an NFL game in London, Jacksonville and New England, and yeah, that green means wet and windy weather. But how about back here in the States? We'll highlight the most impactful weather for the games outside this weekend with your Week 7 Go-Cast right after the break.
All right, as we get deeper and deeper into the fall, weather concerns are getting more and more serious. Luckily, we have an expert here to help.
Yes, Sam Argier is that man. Let's go to Sam for this week's Go-Cast. Hey, Sam.
Hey, Mike. Hey, Jason. Yeah, week 3 in London, Jacksonville, 2nd week in a row from them. Last week, they were the visiting team. This weekend, they'll be the home team in London. And yes, wet and windy in London. But back here in the States, no weather worries. The weather pretty calm for all the outdoor games this weekend. Will be clear and dry, just a slight breeze at times. We'll start in London. Yeah, that green means rain, and yeah, it's going to be cool and windy. Look at the wind, 20 to 30. So that could impact swirling wind. The stadium is Wembley out in London this week, and they've been kind of changing it up. So it was a different stadium the last couple weeks. So low 60s, upper 50s there. We'll head across the pond, and look at how clear it is across the northeast. 60s and 70s as we go through Green Bay, a little breeze, 10 to 20. Also in Buffalo, 10 to 20 mile per hour wind. But beautiful weather in New York for that divisional matchup against Philadelphia. Cleveland against Cincinnati, looking good there. 2 afternoon games, late afternoon, early evening, depending on your time zone. 85, that's going to be a big one, San Francisco and Kansas City. Another warm game in the Bay Area. In fact, the warmest game this weekend will be in Santa Clara, where the stadium is, Levi Stadium there. In Washington, we've got 71 degrees. And then for the Sunday night game, nice and cool in Pittsburgh as they take on New York at 51 degrees. Aaron Rodgers will be there along with Davante Adams. And then Monday evening, 2 games. One will be indoors on the West Coast, but the Tampa Bay game is outside against Baltimore at 74 degrees. So typically as we go deeper into the season, it's week 7 now. We're getting close to the halfway point. We generally start to see bigger weather impacts. I feel like we had a little more action a couple weeks ago with some of the cooler weather and,
right.
Of course, the hurricane that was moving through Florida. And but this weekend, I got to tell you, pretty smooth sailing for all the outdoor games.
So it's more so about London. That's where the issues are. Wembley, it's wet and windy, kind of like the Jacksonville season. How it's been going for them,
sure.
Right?
I thought it was interesting that game in where was it? Was it Buffalo where the wind was swirling, but neither kicker could make even an extra point barely.
That might have been Buffalo. Green Bay was pretty windy last weekend as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of craziness out there. But all right, so it's kind of smooth sailing though here in the States.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Yeah, no, it was Aaron Rodgers in Buffalo, and nobody was making a kick. It was that Monday night game.
Crazy. Yeah. Their line didn't have a good game.
No.
All right, well, don't go anywhere because the Fantasy GOAT is going to be right back, and you know what time that is. It's going to be GOAT lineup time, Jason. I'm coming for you.
Yeah, I know.
Sam, I'm coming for him.
All right, take him down, Mike.
I'm going to try.
This is the Fantasy GOAT.
All right, welcome back to the Fantasy GOAT. Well, GOAT lineup-wise, Jason, you have a record currently of 3-2. Well, I'm sitting here at 2-3, so I'm a game behind you. But before we get into today's GOAT lineup, let's remind you kids at home how GOAT lineup actually works. So each week, Jason and I, we face off head-to-head in standard scoring format. We select 1 QB, 1 RB, 1 wide receiver, and lastly, 1 tight end. But here's the catch. Players can only be used once all year long, so there's that survivor style to this as well. Now, Jason, as you lead me 3-2, 1 game ahead of me, let's hear who you have for week 7.
All right, Mike. So I'm going with quarterback Brock Purdy. I think for the same reason I'm playing tight end Travis Kelce. You know, that's in the same game. I just think these two teams have a lot to prove. They were, of course, both in the big game, and I think every player is going to try their hardest to outplay the other. So I like having some sort of piece of pie in that game.
Yeah.
My biggest risk is running back Austin Eckler, because not sure about Brian Robinson, but they are playing Carolina. So I think if there's a good chance that he's going to have a big game, now's the chance.
Yeah, that's a good one. Because they don't think Robinson's going to play either.
Well,
so that's good.
That'd be even better. Yeah. And then wide receiver Zay Flowers, that's a good game for Baltimore, going up against Tampa on Monday with kind of a suspect secondary.
All right. And there at tight end, you get Taylor Swift's boyfriend.
Yes.
Travis Kelce. Good stuff there. All right. So here's my dudes for week 7. I'm going elite. I'm trying to get to 500 against you and get tied in that number 1 ranking. So I'm going to go quarterback Josh Allen. I like, listen, Amari Cooper now there. He's got a number 1 target. So I'm hoping it's going to be a little bit more through the air rather than on the ground. And running back wise, they're a little banged up right now. Plus, at running back, I'm going with my dude, my favorite player right now in the league, Saquon Barkley out of Philly. He's got his revenge game against the New York G-Men. So we'll see what happens there. I think he's going to be running all over them. And we all remember what happened with owner John Mara. He's not happy about it. He's going to have heart failure after this one. DK Metcalf, the guy who looks exactly like me, got to go with him. We're simpatico in every single way.
Right.
And lastly, Cade Otton, tight end. That's a tough position. So, Jason, I'm gunning for you this week.
I think the big factor, the X factor, is going to be Barkley.
Yeah.
I think you're right. I almost took him as well, just to even it out.
You
but I'm
knew
like,
I would.
Yeah, I'm like, yeah, I'll go with that.
All right. We'll see what happens. See you guys next week.